Can you believe this was a fair hearing? And do you still want to testify publicly, even though you gave this deposition?
Well, I'm not going to do it again. They had a chance to do it in public, and I wish they had done it in public. I thought it was very repetitive. I thought that they asked literally the same questions over and over again. If they are going to fulfill their responsibilities to literally investigate the investigations, which is what they originally said was the scope of their work, I think they could have spent the day more productively.
Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton there after spending more than 6 hours in a closed-door deposition yesterday with the House Oversight Committee as part of its investigation into convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The question is, did Republicans accomplish whatever it was they set out to do there? Meanwhile, the Omani foreign minister is headed to Washington to meet with Vice President J.D. Vance today in an effort to stave off war with Iran. The question is, does today's meeting mean a breakthrough deal could be on the horizon? And the U.S. military uses a laser to shoot down a drone in Texas that belonged to Customs and Border Protection. The question is, don't these branches of the U.S. government talk to each other? It's way too early for this. Good morning and welcome to Way Too Early, the show that's glad it doesn't own a drone. I'm Allie Vitale on this Friday, February 27th, and we will start with the news out in Chappaqua. As former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton denied ever meeting Jeffrey Epstein or knowing anything about his crimes during a more than 6-hour closed-door deposition yesterday with the House Oversight Committee in Westchester County. The Republican-led committee subpoenaed Clinton and her husband, former President Bill Clinton, to appear in its investigation into the convicted sex offender. The pair battled for months with committee chairman James Comer, calling the subpoenas invalid and politically motivated. This meeting, though, quickly became contentious after Clinton stopped the session after learning Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert of Colorado leaked an image from inside the room. Remember, this was a private deposition. She sent it to right-wing podcaster Benny Johnson, who immediately posted that image on social media. Clinton expressed her frustration with the leak during a press conference after the deposition, noting she requested her testimony be made public, and that request was denied, only for a committee member to make a private photo of the event public anyway. Clinton also said by the end of her deposition, questions from Republican committee members devolved into questions about UFOs and conspiracy theories. Watch.
I don't know how many times I had to say I did not know Jeffrey Epstein. I never went to his island. I never went to his homes. I never went to his offices. So it's on the record numerous times. It then got, at the end, quite unusual because I started being asked about UFOs and a series of questions about Pizzagate, one of the most vile, bogus conspiracy theories that was propagated on the internet. That was serving as the basis of a member's questions to me.
Now, Bill Clinton will be deposed today, and his ties to Epstein, including 4 flights on the financier's jet in 2002 and 2003, as well as photos in the files released by DOJ, are going to be central to the committee's interest. He has denied any wrongdoing. It's a lot for us to break down here on set. Thankfully, we've got MS Now senior national security reporter David Rohde here with me. So, David, I do think if we focus on yesterday, it was striking to me to hear Hillary Clinton repeatedly say, I never flew on the jet. I didn't know Epstein. Maxwell was at my daughter's wedding because she was somebody's +1. I mean, she has the distance from this. And I think Democrats have made that point repeatedly. It's different, though, for former President Clinton. Can you talk about what we saw yesterday and what we might see today?
It does seem to me that the Boebert maneuver, the photo that was taken, sort of backfired. It'll play into narratives that Democrats want to hear, that it's an unfair thing, and they were sort of badgering her. And again, the Clintons said repeatedly they wanted to testify in public. They wanted to show how repetitive this is. The question is, does Bill Clinton want a public hearing? I mean, we'll see how he handles himself today. He's obviously a very deft politician, but he's got many more questions to answer. And that we'll have to see how he fares today.
And I think that there are also Democratic members who want to hear what the former president has to say, both because he does appear in the files. He did clearly have conversations and relationships with Maxwell, with Epstein, both from a photo perspective that we have seen, the image, for example, of him in the hot tub, but then also the ways that he might have been trying to obtain funding for the Clinton Global Initiative. The thing that Hillary Clinton's camp was saying was she was a senator during that time. She wasn't involved with putting together the money behind CGI. And so, again, I think there's distance there. But I think it also opens the door to the way that Democrats are now saying, OK, if we get a former Democratic president, why can't we get the president of the United States, Donald Trump?
Yeah, and that's clearly the Democratic strategy. They're trying to say we are defending the victims. We want everyone held accountable. Why isn't President Trump being asked against this? And again, they're just going to hammer, as this goes forward, the questions about Trump, the issue of these missing documents that our colleague Lisa Rubin has reported.
Yeah.
And that's what you're going to hear over and over from Democrats. And the country's so divided, it's not going to maybe change the base on either side. But I think there are independents and moderates who are out there that are really disgusted with this whole process, want to see accountability. And I think that the fact that these Trump documents are missing are going to continue to be a story even after Bill Clinton.
I think that's right. And I also think that Chairman Comer has tried over the course of the last few weeks to say, well, we're doing this in nonpartisan fashion. We've called former Republican AGs like Bill Barr and Alex Acosta. We've called Democrats. Obviously, they have the Clintons in front of them. He's trying to make the case that this is nonpartisan. And so I asked him in that spirit yesterday, would you want to hear from, for example, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick? And he at one point said, I think that's a possibility, and then sort of meandered away from that. But Democrats have said, oh, he said that's a possibility? Great. We want that to be a possibility. We're going to try to move on that during our next session. So do you ultimately think that there's enough public pressure that could get some of the obvious figures? And I would put Bill Clinton in the obvious figures category, but I would also put Howard Lutnick there because he's talked publicly about this. No one really even had asked him. He offered it up in podcast interviews last year. Do you think that there's enough there, or are we just so partisan that this is just what it is now?
I think there's enough pressure that, I mean, look at the vote that passed to push for these documents to be released. It was unanimous, and that's extraordinary in this time of deep partnership. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Lutnick. I don't think Trump will ever testify, but I want to point out, and nerding out a bit, I wrote a book about the Justice Department and all the changes that happened after Watergate. Yeah. It's supposed to be a nonpartisan Justice Department. It's supposed to be, about facts and about holding, following the facts wherever they lead, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat. Obviously, that is not happening when it comes to President Trump. And a footnote from history, President Ford testified to Congress about the pardon he issued for Richard Nixon. And this was an intentional move in a very different moment in American history where the presidency was seen as out of control. Presidents had gotten way too much power, and Nixon had committed terrible abuses. So it's not unprecedented for a president, if it's a major enough issue, to go and speak to Congress, to respect what should be a co-equal branch of government. Donald Trump will not do that. As long as they keep withholding these documents, Pam Bondi, I think, is making a political mistake.
And yet, when you talk about new precedents being made, the fact that Bill Clinton is going before the committee against his will, effectively, being subpoenaed, having battled the subpoena, he's the first president to have to do that. And I think that then, again, opens the door, sets the precedent for what happens when Trump leaves office, because that is going to happen. It's just a matter of the calendar. I also want to